Hi, today I'm looking at the Asus Zenbook Duo. So, the 2026 version. It's a dual screen laptop. I saw it at CES 2026 and at the Toronto Game Expo. So, you can see here that it's a dual screen laptop. It has a top of the line Intel processor, the Core 9 Ultra 388H, which is a 16 core, 16 thread CPU that can boost up to 5.1 gigahertz. And the TDP at the base power is 25 watt, but it can go as low as 15 and as high as 80 watt, depending of the workload you have. The memory is 32 gig DDR5 at 9600 megahertz, which is probably the fastest memory I ever tested. It also had onboard graphic with the SoC. It's the Arc B390 that I already tested at CES 2026, and I was very impressed. The GPU has 12 XC core and 12 ray tracing core. To make a comparison, the Intel Arc discrete GPU, the B580, has 20 XC core and 20 ray tracing core. So it's a little more than half. Like I said, when I tested that GPU at CES 2026, I was really impressed by it. And my first comment to Intel is like, I want to see that in an NLPC. They were saying, oh, it's coming with the G3 Extreme. And now you're starting seeing a rollout of like new NLPC with that same GPU and CPU. And Intel quote like 55 FPS at 1080p high setting at Cyberpunk 2077, and you easily can get that performance. You need to remember it's not a discrete GPU, but because it's a SoC with 32 gig of shared memory, up to 28 gig can automatically be assigned to the GPU. Like if you're doing AI workload, the combined tops is 180. So you should have good performance and be able to load in memory very large model. But the real star of the show is the dual screen. They didn't cheap out for the bottom screen, they are identical. And let's look at the spec. OLED at 1000 nits, HDR certified, 144 Hz each screen. And I can really say that like it's the best screen I saw in a laptop before. It's insane, but I really feel it's a Halo product. It's like they decided to say to the engineer, let's go wild, let's get the best component you can and see what kind of laptop you could get. But it's also, for the model I have, $4,000 Canadian before tax. The laptop also been provided to me by Intel directly for 2 weeks for testing, and sadly I sent it back to them in the next couple of days. So let's look at the laptop, do a quick unboxing, talk about the spec, and we'll come back for the conclusion a little. Okay, so let's do a quick unboxing first. We can see the top of the chassis here. It really feels sturdy and well built. I was really impressed with the build quality of this laptop. There was a large box for the power brick, which worried me how large it would be. But when you open it, you realize that it's a very small and narrow 100-watt charger. There was also a Thunderbolt 5 Pro cable up to 240 watt. I left it in the box and didn't use it for that review. We can see here the laptop in the box. And when I remove the laptop, you also add documentation. You can see that the laptop is thick, but it's not horrible. You have a power button, a Thunderbolt 4 USB-C port, the vent, and a USB-A port. On the other side, you have two USB-C, one that is on the keyboard, combo jack, and I really appreciate that you have a HDMI port there. I do wish that there would be a SD card port, but that's the only omission. It's just that it would be great for video editing, especially that you have two OLED screen. You have a fabric protection for both of the screen, hopefully so they don't scratch. You can see both of the screen here. It's really impressive how tiny the hinge is and the bezel. And you can see here the small removable keyboard. Talking about the keyboard, it's insane. You can see how thin it is compared to the box here. It's almost tough to see. Here you can compare it to a USB-A key to give you an idea of the thinness of the laptop keyboard. You have at the bottom of the back of the keyboard the charging port. It's magnetic, so if you clip the keyboard on the lower screen, it will automatically charge itself, which is a really neat way to do it. It's also super easy to clip on the laptop or to remove. You just need to go by the top of it. Here I was struggling to find the easiest way to remove it, but it's really from the top. The typing experience is pretty good, and I like the very light trackpad. It's not the best keyboard I had on a laptop, but to be so thin and give so much feedback, I really like it. This laptop also let me do the triple OLED battle station. Like I mentioned before, this is the upgraded version of the CPU. So it's the $4,000 before any tax. We can see here in the Intel drivers for the GPU, the full spec of the CPU and the GPU. Like I said, 16 core, 16 thread for the CPU, and 12 XC core and 12 ray tracing core for the GPU, and some very fast memory i9600. Now let's talk about the different screen mode you can use. You can use laptop mode, which is maybe what people would use 50% of the time, or dual screen mode, where you can separate the keyboard and have the screen vertically. I do feel it's the optimal way to use this laptop, and this is where the marketing is mostly focusing. Let's talk performance because we need to test it like a regular laptop. The first thing is when it detected that I was connecting to a Wi-Fi 7 network, it told me about it. And I did 650, but I run the benchmark a couple of times and I got up to 800 Mbps, so it's super good for the Wi-Fi speed. I did run Crystal Disk Mark just to test the NVMe SSD performance, and 7,000 in reading and almost 6,000 in writing is very good performance for a Gen 4 drive. Then I ran OCCT. There's two things I wanted to see. First, if the cooling would be adequate with the keyboard attached, and I would get to 70 to 80, 75 to 80 degree. So the laptop would stay relatively cool for the TG Max of 100 of the CPU, but the laptop would get warm running benchmark like that. The other thing I wanted to see is that because there was no option in the Intel driver to set up how much VRAM you wanted, like 8 gig or something like that, I did run the VRAM test just to see if it would assign 80% of the VRAM, and it did. It went up to 14 gig of virtual memory. So it seems to work well automatically in the drivers to assign how much VRAM it needs. Then I ran Cinebench 26, the latest version, and I got 201 in single core and 1274 in multi-core, which is way under what Intel were quoting in their review guide for Cinebench 2026, maybe 4 times less performance. I'm not really sure if it's a bug in Cinebench, so let's take those results with a grain of salt. Also, Cinebench doesn't see Arc GPU, so you cannot test them with it. Geekbench 6.7.1 is next. 2957 is the single core result, and 16945 is the dual core result, which is an uplift of 18.5% versus my Snapdragon LX1 first generation. 6.71. And this is where an OpenCL, the B390, got 3 times the performance of the Snapdragon X, and for Vulkan 2 times the performance. So we can really see that there's a generation leap there with the B390. I then ran Puget Bench for Creator, the DaVinci Resolve Basic, which used just native encoding on Windows. And you can see here that you're getting the double of performance using the B390 laptop. So it's an easy victory there. 3D Mark was next. 846 for Speedway. Steel Nomad was over 1600 and 7000 for TimeSpy. So really good 3D performance for onboard graphic here. Blender Classroom Rendering was next. It took 5 minutes, 0.31 second for the Zenbook Duo and 8 minutes, 55 second for the Snapdragon. Gaming was next. Cyberpunk 2077 benchmark. At 1080p we would get an average of 70 frames per second. And at 1440p ray tracing low with XeSS, we would get an average of 41 FPS. So impressive result for onboard graphic. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was next. At 1080p high, we got an average of 88 frames per second and 56 at 1440p high. I look next at Baldur's Gate 3. At 1080p native resolution with high setting, I was getting an average of 44 frames per second. But then at 1080p when I activated XeSS, I got to 128 average FPS. So the game is really playable in both ways. The only game that seemed to struggle more was Assassin's Creed Shadow. At 1080p medium, I would get an average of 34 FPS. But I didn't really try to optimize the setting, and that was with Intel XeSS. So that was the only game I feel that I would need to play way more with the settings. So what do I think of the 2026 version of the Asus Zenbook Duo? I get it now. I can see why someone would want a dual screen laptop. Like I mentioned, those dual OLED screen are just insane. I'm really glad they didn't cheap out on the screen, because often on device, even like portable console, there was a tendency for getting a great screen for the top screen, but the bottom one was like the cheapest screen they could use, because like on the DS you would use it for a stylus. On a laptop like that, maybe half of the time you would put your keyboard on it, but no, they used identical screen, and they're both great. So depending if you want to use your laptop in dual screen mode or not, you will have like, you won't feel that you will cheap out. And the fact that the screen are identical, you won't have like too much variance between a screen and the other. When you buy like two screens that are different brand, you always, oh, this one is warmer, this one is colder, this one is brighter. You don't have that issue there, which is really important. Also feel that like the quality is Apple-like, and the way they like design the laptop, it really feels premium and solid. I really like the thick stand that you can see here. It's super thick. And it's hold the laptop very well. Also, I'm surprised you have the speaker are under the laptop. And I'm really surprised that like how good the sound still sound. And with the software that came with it, yes, there was some bloatware that I removed, like AI model and things like that. But the software to deal with the screen with gesture, or like just having a button to switch between the top screen and the left screen just to switch the windows, works super well. It really feels sturdy and solid. Battery life is great. Now, I didn't measure it because the number were like insane enough that I didn't feel I wanted to lose 2 days for it. But they quote you in dual screen mode for 18 hours of video watching and 12 hours of web surfing. But if you switch to one screen, then it switched to 32 hours video watching or 18 hours of web browsing because they use a dual battery, which is 99 watt hours. Performance for gaming also great. Like I said, you can play at 1080p high for Cyberpunk and have like 55 to 60 frames per second. I would put Baldur's Gate 3 and like I would do 40 frames second, but like if I switch to XCSS, then I would go to 110 to 120 FPS. So even like heavy game and more recent game, you should still get good performance. The only one that had more difficulty was Assassin's Creed Shadow. By default, I think at 1080p medium, I was doing 30 FPS, but I didn't really try to play, and that was with XCSS. I didn't really try too much to play with the setting. I was like, okay, this is good enough. But if I would play that game, I would try to find a better balance to get to 60 FPS, even lower the resolution if possible. Also feel it's almost like a no compromise laptop, but of course not everything is perfect. I do feel that at full load, it's get quite warm and loud. But like the warmness, I was on the couch with the laptop on my lap, and I was like, oh, this is warm. But then I realized, oh, I can just remove both screen, put them in front of me, and just keep the wireless keyboard, and then I have absolutely no heat from the laptop. So that was a good way to bypass it. Now the laptop is thick, but I still feel because it's like so thin with the bezel that like it's very portable. It's not much thicker than my MacBook Pro 14-inch. Now you still have to fight Windows 11. From time to time it would crash or it would not understand what I was trying to do with both screen. Now Asus has a software that lets you like help with gesture. And like I said, there's a button for switching top screen to left to bottom screen with your window. So we just swap them. One main issue is that Windows most of the time would try to revert to 60 Hz, even if I configure both screen at 140 Hz. So before gaming, just check to make sure that you stay at 144 Hz. But it's mostly a Windows issue. Now, I was a little sad because I saw at E3 the Zephyrus Duo, and now it's $1,500 more than this laptop, but they add a tent mode, so you put both screen like that, and then 2 instances of the game like League of Legends or like, I don't know, a 2D beat 'em up like Shredder Revenge, and you can play with a friend and each have your screen. I was hoping that even if there was no discrete GPU, you would be able to do that, but the thing is that the hinge, like, it laid the laptop flat, but you cannot put it in tent mode like that. Also, the Zephyrus Duo has a mobile 5090, but when I talked to Asus at the Toronto Game Expo in March, they were not even sure they would bring them to Canada because the price is like, 5,500 Canadian, while the one I have right now, which is the Zenbook Duo, is 4,000. Which brings me to the biggest issue, which is the price before tax. Now, I feel it's a very nice Halo product. Like I said, when the engineer went crazy and get the best of what they could, best processor, best onboard graphic, best OLED screen. But I can feel that like the market for it is like, if you're a dual screen fan, like dual screen like phone, or if you're a person that travel a lot in hotel, but travel a lot but different place, not always the same place, and where you feel that having 2 external monitor or just an external display is not really the best option, then I can see this laptop make a lot of sense because you still have dual screen, so you can put YouTube on one, work on the other. You could put, like when I divide my screen, because I have an ultra wide, I would put in 2 windows, Teams and Outlook, and the main screen would be my work screen. So I still think it's a better option. The other one is that if you are in the corporate world where money is not an issue for laptops, it could make sense because now if you need a laptop for a large AI model, the fact that you could allocate up to 28 gigs to the GPU, that could make sense. So I do feel that like I can see a small market for this laptop, but at the same time, like the alternative solution would be like, I don't know, get like a nice $2,000 laptop or like a base MacBook Pro, get two external screen or one or two portable screen, and you still save 1.5K. Yeah, those two screens won't be OLED, I get that, but you'll be able to put them in horizontal mode, which I think that's one flaw. I understand that horizontal laptop, which like with screen that like extend are really clunky and it really doesn't seem a nice solution. It's just that you need to understand that, okay, it's mostly something that you will have a top screen and a bottom screen and use your workflow that way. Like for DaVinci Resolve, having like your timeline at the bottom and like the video on top was great. But if I would do like very large Excel spreadsheet, now I prefer an ultra wide or having like two external next to it to be able to see a lot of rows or a database schema. So I think that like you need to be aware of that. But at the end of the day, I'm still sad to give back this laptop because like I'm gonna travel with family and I bought like um, like a 24-inch monitor to when I go work there plus my laptop. And I see this laptop and I'd be like, oh, that would be great to have the dual screen built in the laptop when I work and just have like for lightness, just have the keyboard that is removable on your knees. So for me, when I'm sad to give a product back, I know that they at least did something right. In this case of this laptop, it's like the best screen I saw in a laptop. The onboard performance, the graphic performance are amazing for like with the B390. So and you get amazing battery life. So it's a very good laptop. It's just one that you'll pay for the privilege of having the dual OLED screen, and you need to be aware of that. But it's almost a no compromise laptop, which I really like. So thanks for watching and see you at the next one.